because what I'm trying to bring forward here is like, we're not above this, right? In our humanity, we've likely experienced narcissism on some level, wanting to be the hero, the heroine, in ways that make it about us. And we've also been gaslighted. And again, it's not because we're idiots, it's because we're wanting to believe in something and we don't know the way. And so when someone says they have the way, we can displace our trust that from our own self and our own knowingness on and place it fully on another. And the reason this is so important is because it's going to stop us from making personal attacks and instead be able to meet one another where we are at because we've been there too. And this is where it takes, and that's why I'm speaking about this psychologically from a place of consciousness, because it's going to take our own vulnerability within ourselves. And this isn't vulnerability that makes us weak. It allows us to be so strong that we can stand in our vulnerability. So it's actually safe for someone who's given their power away, who does not want to look weak because it's a threat for them, to safely be vulnerable as well. That's what we are talking about here. And it's allowing someone that in our vulnerability that they can be vulnerable to examine and ultimately shift their beliefs. And what a huge, huge act of courage it is for all of us. Because otherwise, if we attack or put down another for their beliefs that oppose yours, it's our own narcissism at play that wants to be right and make others wrong. And then we go round and round and round. And we have done this for millennia. And it's time to let go of focusing on winning and focusing instead on evolving. And that is a united front that we evolve. That is why this is time about bringing forward a new consciousness that allows us together to evolve. That means our ability to recognize that it's human nature, that when you're judged, you get defensive, you're going to dig your heels in, and you're less likely to create the change that you want to create in the world. That's where our egos have to step aside. The reality is we've all lived in bubbles of what we've been told is right, and it hasn't necessarily been true. Maybe it was true or what we understood best in that time, but it takes a willingness to examine our previous beliefs, our current beliefs, and recognize how they may be causing harm, whether that's a political belief, a religious belief, a belief we grew up with in our family, and that we are being able to look at them. Otherwise, we are being gaslighted by our own fears that say we're right and we know the way. So the prejudice that we carry have been injustices that have been happening to people of color, non-heterosexuals, females, and now we've seen it recently in the US happen to a white male gun owner, right? And so it's hitting home that these injustices aren't just for a certain few that we can excuse off. It's hitting home how widespread the injustice is. And that is a wake-up call to our own psyches to see the urgency in this, because there really should have been urgency all along to create action. And now it's like, how much worse does it have to get until we awaken, until we are willing to be vulnerable with ourselves to question? And so it's just recognizing that getting to the truth, it sounds easy, but it's always hard earned within ourselves and within the world. And so the only way to stop treating one another with contempt and find for compassion is to understand how easy it can be to be lulled away from the truth in whatever way that you may have experienced being lulled away from the truth. And then you recognized that that wasn't right for you, for your values, for your beliefs. And so it's really that understanding that we can stay in these states, these kind of dream, foggy states of the ego, these trances of the ego. And because it's what we know, and what we know feels safe, and we don't like change. And we know we are unsettled by change because we're feeling it right now. We're feeling all the feels as we are going through change right now. It's unstable. And our ego's like certainty. And so people that are having a harder time with this are clinging on to what their ego has claimed as certainty, even though it's not life affirming. Now, what we have on our side is that, again, that divine spark that is within us, that's within all of us. And so for people who don't want to believe that people who are granted power, let's say the police, would ever abuse their power, it's because of their goodness within them, as well as the part of them that's trying to create certainty in a world where there is manipulation of power, right? And so it's understanding that if we remain in denial of these shadow aspects of power within ourselves and within others, power is going to continue to be abused. So rather than to be tempted by our own egos to create more separation between people by calling them evil, by calling them filthy rich bastards, by calling them plain old idiots, we are being invited, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. invited us, to love those we oppose. So rather than judge one another, which again just makes them dig in their heels that they're right, we want those in opposition to know that they are good. Because then you become the one that is able to see and understand them. They're not the bad guy anymore. You see and understand them, and that's what will ultimately help them overcome their own fears to more deeply awaken to the good within them. Their hearts want to awaken just as much as yours have always wanted to awaken. And perhaps you've been blessed with circumstances that has allowed you to awaken before them. And now the question is, how do you want to reach out your hand to them?